Police at your door. Bailiffs demanding entry. A legal threat lands without warning. In that moment, who's actually on your side? This is Willoughby Genius Mark II, a legal protection platform that acts like your own personal legal team. Built on over 750,000 verified legal entries, spanning 50-plus countries, it delivers immediate, actionable guidance when it matters most. No appointments, no gatekeepers, no £300 an hour delays. Just clear, lawful direction in real time. It doesn't replace the law. It gives you direct access to it. Powered by advanced AI, Willoughby Genius Mark II verifies, prompts, and protects. Calmly, precisely, and without bias. It never forgets a statute. It never panics. And it's always available. Legal technology is moving fast. Those who understand it early will have choices. Those who don't will be managed by it. Willoughby Genius Mark II goes further than any barrister. It educates too. Know your rights. Act decisively. Take back control. Click on the link below and use LSB Pro for £5 off your first month's premium.
Hello and welcome to another LSB Film Podcast with me, your host Chris Brooks. I hope everyone's well. So today I am joined again by Nicholas Martin. And if you heard our last podcast, you know he doesn't do small talk for long. Nicholas is someone who looks past the headlines and asks who controls the narrative, who benefits, and why the public keeps getting managed. Early on we get into the whole obsessions with titles and hierarchy, this idea that some people are above others. And Nicholas makes a good case that it is childish, outdated, and keeps society stuck in obedience. From there we will move on to what he calls a turning point in human consciousness. A phase where the truth cannot stay buried and everything hidden under the floorboards starts coming out. We talk about AI too, not just as a threat, but something that could either become a captor or a servant, depending on what we allow. And yes, we go into the frustration that many of you have. Epstein, the names, the redactions, but the thing that annoys me the most is the lack of arrests. Nicholas lays out his views on why he believes justice stalls and why scepticism has to apply to both mainstream narratives and compromised alternative ones. Nicholas is also a councillor for his hometown, a parish councillor. Now, all I can say is I would love to have more parish councillors or any councillors with this kind of critical thinking thought process.
Are you concerned about all this corruption being rebranded as conspiracy theory? Well, don't you worry. Sit back and relax and join in the conversation with today's guest. Welcome to another LSB Film Productions podcast with your host, Chris Brooks.
So yes, welcome to the show. Lovely to have you back on again. The wonderful, marvellous Nicholas Martin.
Well, last time you called me Sir Nicholas Martin, so I've obviously been demoted.
Well, I figured that given that most sirs are in compromised positions, that I wouldn't want to tarnish you with that title.
Excellent.
I'll just refer you to Sugar Tits. How's that?
Just refer me to what?
Sugar Tits.
Well, I'm glad that you demoted me because all of humanity is equal, and I think, David Beckham queuing up to get 90.
Oh, yeah, it makes you want to vom, doesn't it?
It's demeaning for him to put somebody else in a position of superiority. We're all equal, and I think
he also pushed the you-know-whats onto the you-know-whos during the you-know-what phase. Yeah.
Say no more. But we've entered an interesting phase in human consciousness where all the truth is coming out and nothing can be suppressed. I've got nothing against David Beckham, but the whole honour system is rather childish. It's like, going back to school and wearing a prefect's badge and saying, I'm slightly better than you and I can do things you can't do. And it's extremely childish. In fact, the whole monarchy system is based on the idea that the king or the queen, I can't think of the current queen as the queen. I think of her as ex-Mrs.
Is she referred to as the queen?
They do, yes. They call her the queen. I always think of, Elizabeth as the queen. but they're referring to ex-Mrs. Parker Bowles. And what I was thinking is the idea that, Mrs. Parker Bowles, ex-Mrs. Parker Bowles, is superior to other people is really
delusional.
Again, it's delusional. That's a good word. She's equal to the rest of our humanity. And the sooner our society grows out of this hierarchical structure and puts it in the bin, and princes and princesses are suitable for Hans Christian Andersen or child's nursery rhymes, but not for 21st century modern so-called democratic societies.
I don't think that exists anymore.
Say that again.
I don't think that exists anymore.
No, probably. But I think it'll come back.
I hope so, because I think, maybe 15 years ago, I was thinking, oh, what a great time to be alive. We've got great technology. We've got great this. That's all gone to shit.
Well, I think we're at a turning point in human consciousness. Many years ago, I met a man who used to be extremely well known in the philosophical world, but is less known because he died 40 years ago. That was J. Krishnamurti. Funnily enough, admired by people like John Cleese, Van Morrison, Bernard Shaw, years ago, the playwright, and Simon Callow. People like that liked him a lot, and I liked him a lot. I met him. He was an extraordinary man. But he said that human consciousness is coming up to a crisis. And we're now, in my view, at that crisis. And the signs are that we're going to go in the right way, because AI can either be a captivator of human consciousness, or it can be the servant of human consciousness. And I've got a feeling that we're now going through a very revelatory phase when all truth is coming out from under the floorboards. And human beings, in my view, are innately decent. So it augurs very well for the fact that we'll be able to use AI technology as a servant and not be subject to it as a ruler. And so I'm very, very optimistic, even though it's a Monday morning.
See, I am, and I have always said on all my videos that on the whole, I am overly optimistic.
Yes.
On the outcome. I don't necessarily know whether we're going to live to see that outcome in its fullness, shall we say. But things like the Epstein list,
Right.
We've got names. Where are the arrests? What's happening? Why is nothing happening? Why are there so many names redacted? If they're criminals, get them.
Very interesting. Well, you see, we've been living in, I think, what the Buddha called illusion. And I think he was referring at a philosophical level, but looking at our society, you've got MPs and Parliament not serving the people, but serving their own agenda. And there's a sort of a club, an association of people who have an agenda which is different from us, from the ordinary people. And that agenda includes all the judiciary. And it's worldwide. It's not just in the UK, it's in America. So if Trump were to arrest all these people who have been doing bad things, the judges would let them off. Look at James Comey. Now, it was alleged that James Comey took part he was, for people who don't know the name, he's an American who used to run the FBI. And he was doing the job that Kash Patel does now. And he was alleged to have been involved in the Russia hoax because Trump got in 2016, as you remember, and this club of people had to get him out. So they concocted a story that Trump was colluding with the Russians and rigged the elections. And this chap, James Comey, head of the FBI, was involved allegedly in this conspiracy to remove Trump through the Russian collusion. And it involved Britain because part of that ring to get rid of Trump included Hillary Clinton, allegedly, and she's alleged to have paid, through Fusion GPS, a lobbying firm, an ex-British MI6 agent or officer called Kristofer Steele. And he made up a dossier which said Trump was colluding with Russians and all this, that, and the other, which turned out to be a bag of lies. And the whole impeachment eventually fell apart. And now that Trump came back, there was a move to arrest James Comey. And what happened? The judge let him off. So there's no point in arresting and putting people on trial if the judiciary are part of the club. So it's very important that Trump wins the next elections, which are called the midterm elections in November. And then if he has a huge majority in the Senate and in the House, in Congress as a whole, then he has the power to impeach the judiciary, the bad judges, replace them with good judges. Then you can put the people on trial and then they can go to prison. And what about the UK, which is very, very closely linked to America? The judges will either be exposed here in the UK or they'll turn turtle and start to do the right thing. And that is why I'm extremely optimistic. And don't forget, time goes very, very fast. We're now already in February. Won't be long before we get to November. And Trump is going to give everybody in America apparently $2,000 bonus through the taxation system. He's going to he's stimulating the American economy, reducing interest rates because Jerome Powell, head of the Fed, is going to be replaced. And therefore, the American economy will be booming. People will feel much more comfortably off. They'll be able to start buying houses again because the interest rates will go down. Manufacturers are coming back. Employment is getting better. So by the time November comes, people will be crying out for Trump to go back, to win he's sponsoring, all these senators and congressmen, and they'll vote in droves to get them back. And then we'll be well on our way. And then you can have the arrests that you would like.
What about the elephant in the room with things like ICE, which is going on?
Yeah, well, you see, don't forget, this club includes the media, the universities, the police, the judges, the politicians, and it's a universal club, not only in the UK, in America, all around the world, Western world. And what was your question again?
Well, things like the ICE, which is going on in America.
Yes, right.
And coming here, apparently.
Part of the revelations will be Trump explaining how the elections were rigged. The election in 2020 was rigged. And it was rigged by various different methods. One, by bringing in loads of immigrants and getting them to vote Democrat as opposed to Republican for Trump. Now, this idea of bringing in immigrants and paying them money to vote is not peculiar to America. It's happened in Southeast Asian countries where they brought people in from the next door country, paid them money, and then they rigged the election. So it's not just unique to America. It's a fairly common system. So if you send the immigrants back and ask people to have voter ID, that cuts out that fraudulent thing. You also have to clean up the voter rolls because many dead people voted in America in 2016. And you also have to shut down the electronic voting system in America. So people vote like we do in the UK, put your thing on a piece of paper and it goes in a box. And it's not scanned into a computer. And then people hack into the computer and change. And then you can print up the necessary votes, stuff them in the box, and change the election. So all these things are being brought to bear so that you have a fair election system in the midterms, you have a booming economy, and you stop these things like the ICE arrests. Now, when you look at the people who are shooting the ICE operatives, they turn out to be paid agitators, just as Trump said, like Antifa members, Black Lives members, all of that. Those people are paid agents, as Trump has identified. They're not huge numbers of the American population getting upset about ICE and turning against them. They're a very limited number of people who are paid, as Trump said, by this ring and of dirty money, which, as Trump pointed out, or it was released, they had 14 computers in the Treasury pumping out money. So if you wanted to set up a ring of insurgents, I could give you this money. I just press the button and give you millions of dollars.
Go on then.
Sorry.
I said, go on then.
Well,
I'm waiting.
I can't do it anymore because Trump has shut it down.
But I've also heard a lot of reports where ICE are just shooting like nationals as well.
Yeah, but where do you get those reports? They come out from the mainstream media. And who runs the mainstream media? The people in ICE are not necessarily, I mean, the idea that the ICE people are sort of devils going around shooting innocent people is the narrative that is put out by the mainstream media. And they're as reliable as the BBC. You know, the BBC altered the Trump speech in January, the January
The sixth one.
insurrection. Exactly. So one has to be extremely skeptical when one listens to these reports. I don't believe for a minute that Homan, who heads up ICE, is an evil devil just randomly killing people. And I don't believe that, the woman above her, if I can remember her name, can't remember her name, is also a devil. They're cleaning up society. But the people who want a dirty society, these people who are wrapped up with Epstein, the people who are corrupt, the corrupt judges, the corrupt policemen, the corrupt politicians, the whole corrupt academia. Exactly. And they've been pumping out all the lies of what Trump calls the Green News scam, to propagate this idea that if you drive your car, which is non-electric, you'll bring the world to an end. And putting up all these windmills and all that, killing the birds. And the whole of that comes through the academic world, pumping out all these theories, BBC putting them out on people, and the mainstream media. And the mainstream media have done the same thing in relation to ICE. What they're doing is what people want to be done in the UK. Normal people don't want loads of immigrants stuck up in a hotel, paid with British taxpayers' money, unvetted, raping and damaging people. Those are the people that ICE are rounding up and then quite rightly sending back. Now, Trump gives them money. He says, here's money. You can go back and come back in the right way by filling in the application forms, getting vetted and coming in. I don't think that's unreasonable. It's just the mass media who create these stories as if the ICE are demonized people shooting innocents. I don't think that's the case at all.
Okay. Well, I will put my hand up because I don't watch the news. So
Good.
That is something that somebody told me.
Yes.
But the person that told me that is somebody that also knows that the news is not to be trusted. So that's why I brought it up, really.
A very good point. But don't forget, and I've come across it because I've been in the anti-5G world for years and years and years now. There are plenty of plants in the alternative media. People who are paid by British or any intelligence, goes on all around the world, American intelligence, to propagate seed in the minds of good people who have given up the mainstream news. They lock onto these false narratives propagated by organizations like Brigade 77. You've heard of them. If you look them up, they're a division of military intelligence who are in what they call the information war, propagating various false narratives, just as they are in the mainstream media. And there was a telegram discussion between one of these Brigade 77 operatives and a woman says, why are you bumping out all these lies? And the man says, I'm paid to, it's my job. So this goes on in the so-called enlightened alternative media, shunting people off down avenues where they're absolutely convinced that ICE is there murdering people and that Trump is a terrible man. That's all filtered in. I mean, look at David Icke. I don't think David Icke is a bad man, and he said a lot of truth, but he's absolutely convinced that Trump is part of what he calls the uniparty system and is a terribly bad man. And there are millions, well, I don't know about millions, but hundreds of thousands of people who are devoted to Icke in the alternative media world. And so they think Trump is a bad man. So you've got the mass media, where they call him Orange Man, and people think he's a terrible man in the mass media. And you've got in this social media network, similarly, a similar sort of propaganda machine going on. I don't know why Icke says Trump is a bad man. Because if you look at the evidence, 1, he's stopping the pedophiles. 2, he's stopping war. 3, he's cleaning out, trying to get people arrested. He wants to clean up the judiciary. He wants to shut down the Federal Reserve Bank, the root of all this rubbish. And if I could see that, then that would be a big step forward. Maybe when he does see it, he'll say, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. That would be meaning he's a man of great integrity.
Yeah. See, I'm still.
Or I got it wrong.
I'm still really on the fence with Trump. I do think he's a player. I think everyone's a player.
Well, what do you mean by a player?
Well, they're there by design. They're not there by chance. I don't think.
Well, I would say you're right in a way, but not in the way you think. There are a group of people, I think, and don't forget, if I'm wrong, I'd be happy to come back on your show and say, look, David, I was right. I must apologize to him. And it's me who got it all wrong. Or we'll do another show when all the truth is out. And I say, oh, I was right. You can give me £5 million. And David Icke was wrong. Let's ask him to apologize.
Because I've heard things like Trump about the ID. That's just a way of sneaking in digital ID.
Right. Yes.
You've got that. You've got that. You got the Venezuela, where technically he went to war with a country that hadn't done anything to the United States.
Well, that's just on that point, Chris. When you say he hadn't done anything to the United States, they were involved in fentanyl and drug, pushing that into young Americans, and many of them die. So that's certainly a foreign threat.
But we could say that about every single country.
And not all of them are involved in drug dealing.
I bet a lot of them are.
Well, a lot of the South American countries are. And of course, Britain has been through the financing of it. And
see, if we want to talk about countries which have gone in and done serious harm, I think England and America, they've got to be the first people to put their hands up, haven't they?
Well, I agree with you. That's why Trump is releasing the Epstein files to point the finger at Epstein's involvement in places like the UK and in America. So I think that this is part of an overall, you see, I don't quite see Trump in the same way as you do. I see him as part of human consciousness. And
to be fair, I'm not really sure how I see him, if I'm honest, but I don't know. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'll give you my clarity. And as I say, if I'm wrong, you can get me back in and say, apologize, Mr. Martin, and I would. Because if I'm an honest bloke, and if I'm wrong, I'll put my hand up and say I've got it all wrong. But I don't think I have got it wrong, but I could have got it wrong. Trump is like all of us, a human being, and we share the same consciousness. And that consciousness is undergoing a change from being in a certain psychological prison to emerging gradually into truth. Now, wherever you find truth, you find compassion. And compassion is just a posh word for love. Everybody understands love. And we're moving from a conflicted, war-based, isolationist society in which countries are constantly bombing each other. There's this drug system ruining people's psyches and massive poverty all over the world. And all of that, we're gradually emerging from that terrible psychological mess, a messy consciousness, into a much cleaner, much more decent consciousness. And Trump is not alone. He's not an orange man subtly inflicting his will on the world. He's part of that flow of a change in human consciousness. And that is what's going on now. And it's irresistible because consciousness comes out of energy. Energy is a cosmic thing. The source of our consciousness is the sun, which is the source of all our energy. So it's an irresistible change, an irresistible cosmic movement. And that's why I'm extremely optimistic. So I don't really think of Trump as separate from that movement. And that's the way I see it. And that the old movement has done some very, very bad things. I mean, as I think I mentioned, my grandfather who was dead was an Austrian in Vienna at the rise of Hitler, and he came over to the UK, joined British military intelligence fighting against Hitler with his cousin Sir Louis Namur. And what happened is that he died, as we all do, but he didn't know that Britain and America were financing both sides in the war. And during that war, the governor of the Bank of England, Montague Norman, he was connected with a chap called Schacht, I think, who was the economics or finance minister, something like that, in Hitler's government. And he was actually the godson of one of this Hitler's cabinet minister's grandchildren. And he was selling gold from Czechoslovakia and giving the money to finance the Nazis. And in America, Prescott Bush, the grandfather of the, George Bush, was doing the same. Now, that's the West creating illusory wars, the scam. And all of that, I think, is gradually coming to an end. The Ukrainian war will eventually come to an end, in my feeling. A lot of truth about what was going on in Ukraine will be coming out. And it's interesting, it features in the Epstein files as well. And Andrew Britton has drawn attention to what has been going on in Ukraine. And so all these things which have been put under the floorboards, and therefore nobody saw them, are coming out. And that's part of a change in human consciousness. And I think it's absolutely irresistible in the sense that it's a cosmic movement. It's not a few people deciding to do it. It's a universal movement. And so I'm very optimistic.
How much of the populace do you think needs to become aware before we see like a significant change in how the population revolves, changes, how,
Yes. You see, this philosopher that I mentioned, who I liked very much, a remarkable man, he said the seeing is the doing. In other words, the awareness of humanity tries it all out. Look at what happened to Prince Andrew, who's no longer a prince. He's no longer a prince because as soon as the public became aware, things happened very quickly. All his titles were removed. He had to move out of Windsor Great Park. And it's a tremendous movement because people suddenly became aware. Same with Peter Mandelson. As soon as people realized that he'd been prancing around in his underpants I don't know why that picture came out, but obviously it's time for him no longer to be a British ambassador in America, long before the picture of him in his underpants came out, because people were aware that he was connected with one of the worst pedophiles in the world. And it's unacceptable to have a British ambassador on that basis, and that's why he went. And he was only sacked by, Starmer, after the British public became aware. If the British public hadn't become aware, he'd still be a British ambassador to America. It's the awareness that changes society. Now, in answer to your question, how many people have to be sort of aware before the whole society changes? I think there were certain seeds put into our society many, many years ago. Those seeds have been gradually flowering and influencing by not persuading people, but just flowering out truth all over the place.
And we have to give David Icke some credit for that.
Yes, I definitely agree. I'm not against David Icke. I don't agree with him about Trump.
Yeah.
I think Icke has given the world a lot of truth in certain areas. And people like that have been flowering out truth in the society. And there was a scientist called Ilya Prigogine. Not many people have heard of him. He worked with Albert Einstein. And he discovered, because everything in the universe is energy, different levels of vibration frequencies, and matter is energy. And he was studying matter at the smallest level and discovered very stable states of matter that look as though they're completely unchangeable, suddenly change beyond all recognition when the conditions are right. And it's a bit like my mother making elderflower champagne. She used to put it in a glass vat and it fermented. And in the fermenter, it went on very slowly. And one day she forgot to take off the cork. And bang, the whole thing smashed because there was so much energy inside by the fermentation process. She hadn't taken off the cork in the glass container, and it just blew apart. And although it's only a small amount of fermentation in the beginning, it grows, it grows, it grows, it grows. It's an unstoppable force. And that's what's happening in our society. So in answer to your question, the seeds were sown long ago, but they've been fermenting and fermenting and fermenting. And now they've blown a bit. And out of the blown has come the Epstein revelations. And don't forget, it's only half of them. Another half is going to come out. So,
do you think, because going back to the Ikes, I watched a video with Gareth where he was just doing his walk and talk, and he raised quite a good point, I thought, and that's where, have they left a lot of redacted people in there? Have they released them with that on purpose? So it's like, look, we've released this, you could be next. Do you know what I mean? Are they using it as? Are they still using it as a form of control for those who haven't yet been redacted?
Well, that's a very good question. You see, Trump is a poker player. That's a very good point. Trump is a poker player extraordinaire. I mean, many people don't know that he befriended the mafia long before he became president. He had casinos in New Jersey in America, and he became very friendly with the mafia. So much so that people said to me, look at his flat, it's got full of mafia symbols and this, that, and the other. But he was befriending the mafia for a reason. He then, with his good friend Rudy Giuliani, they laundered their money through his casinos in New Jersey. He worked with some white hats in the FBI, switched the light on, and 5 mafia dons, I think, went to prison because of that sting operation. You're quite right, in my view, not that I know what Trump is doing, but I suspect that he uses a similar technique to control certain people, to push them in a certain direction. So I wouldn't be surprised that's going on. Mm-hmm. And I think that's one of the tools in his game of poker. But the game of poker is not to pollute society, it's to clean up society. So, and he always gives them a chance, Even in Iran, he's saying to the mullahs, okay, give up now, time's up, and it won't be so bad. But if it is bad, then you're going to get blown to smithereens. So he always gives them a chance. Just like in Maduro, long before he went in and took Maduro out, there were talks with Maduro. So I think what is going on is very, very encouraging. And it will be a much better world for your children and for you and for me and for everybody. But if I'm wrong, I'll apologize to David Icke and say, I got it all wrong, you're quite right. But if he's wrong, I hope he comes on with us and says, oh, I got it wrong.
Well, I have invited Mr. Icke on as the what is it in the country and western films that rolls across the the hay balls, whatever they're called.
I'm not an expert on that.
Okay.
I'm afraid that's a bit beyond my ken.
Okay. So moving on from that then, although I would just like to say, just really quickly, going back to the Epstein files, don't you think it's strange that Stephen Yaxley Lennon hasn't said anything about them? About one of the biggest paedophile rings being uncovered, and he's just been, again, those balls of country and western.
Stephen Yaxley Lennon, who, if people don't know who we're talking about, is no relation of John Lennon, as far as I know. He's Tommy Robinson. You see, Tommy Robinson is focusing on the Muslim problem. There's no Muslim problem in Britain. Take, for example, the grooming gangs. If the police had done their job, there would be no grooming gangs. Full stop, end of story. Whether they're Muslim, Chinese, Russian, or from outer space, if the police had done their job, there would be no rape gangs, full stop. So it's not a Muslim problem, it's a policing problem. And this is why I think the establishment want to hush it up, because they don't want the truth coming out that the police didn't do their job. And the police haven't done their job in many areas. Here in Wokingham, where I happen to be a councillor, not on the borough council, but I'm on a parish council. The Police and Crimes Commissioner, who used to be the deputy to a remarkable man called Anthony Stansfeld, who uncovered massive fraud in the British banking system, and who asked the then Prime Minister, Mrs. May, and her Chancellor, Philip Hammond, to help him with the Financial Conduct Authority to arrest the people in the banks to stop it. They didn't do anything at all. And only because he was Police and Crimes Commissioner that he got his own police force to arrest these people, and then five bank managers or four were sent to prison for deep corruption in the British banking system. Now, the Deputy Police and Crimes Commissioner became the current Police and Crimes Commissioner. He has said, if people are shoplifting, it's not the police who should stop them, it's the public who should stop them. I've never heard of anything more bloody stupid, excuse my language, I don't normally swear, in my life. What are these people paying their council tax for? For the police to serve and protect the people. Can you imagine an old lady who sees some burly bloke pinching a bottle of wine from Waitrose? Is she going to stop this man? I think the police have gone bananas. And that Police and Crimes Commissioner, as the local MP said, is just crackers for suggesting that the British public go in and stop these shoplifters. That's the police's job. The police have vacated their job. I don't know what they do.
The police aren't even they're literally just policy enforcers, aren't they?
Yes.
If somebody breaks into your house and they nick stuff, you won't even get the police come round probably.
Exactly.
It'll be a crime. Here's a crime reference number.
Yes.
Good luck.
Absolutely.
They're not police.
No, you're absolutely right.
But they'll try. They'll come over. They'll knock on the door over a tweet because they are just government mouthpieces.
Yes.
Government bailiffs.
Yes, I agree. And all of that, I think, will change when, that we go through this change of consciousness and people will see the need to go back to honesty. So the police go back to doing their job. And I think that will happen. I think it's inevitable that is the way human consciousness is going. And I refer to the police. I'm chairman of Adult Child Health and Environmental Support, which is trying to do what Robert Kennedy's organization, CHD, he founded CHD before he went into the American government, to try and point out the dangers of electromagnetic radiation. I'm not against technology. In fact, I'm talking, as we now are, on a link which is non-wireless. It's a wired system. Fiber optic cable into the house goes into a router, which is wired. The data goes through a wired system, and I'm on a wired system. No wireless radiation. And Kennedy has said, and I hold up a piece of paper, I'm not Neville Chamberlain.
It's all blurred out anyway.
It says, RFK Jr., Robert Kennedy Jr., stands by comments that Wi-Fi causes cancer. And the telecommunications network, these 5G telecom masts, they emit radiation which the telecom industry knows causes cancer. And we try to point this out to the local authorities, but because they've been bamboozled by the government policies and by silly academics who say that electromagnetic radiation, wireless, can't damage the body, they all think they're doing nothing wrong by allowing these towers to go up all over the place. And I think it's very important that Robert Kennedy does his work, which he's going to do, because he said he's announced a huge investigation into the science of electromagnetic radiation from these telecom masts. Now, the reason I mention all that is because it has a huge effect on human consciousness, because our consciousness comes out of a morphogenetic field. The brain cells in our brain have DNA, which act as an antenna for picking out of that field all our thoughts, all our ideas, all our pictures. So if you change that energy field through too much polluting electromagnetic radiation, you change human consciousness, and also the radiation makes people sick. I'll give you a classic example. In London, TfL, Transport for London, of which Sadiq Khan is the head, of course, have installed Unix traffic monitoring equipment. In that equipment, the document from the manufacturer Unix Traffic says it's fusion. Fusion is the amalgamation of optical light technology, LiDAR, which is infrared, and radar. And in the documentation, it says there's a Heimdall radar device. And in the so-called cameras, the cameras are a combination of optical light cameras to photograph the number plates, but also you have an array of 24 laser diodes, not LEDs, these are laser diodes. And we know the model number they're actually identified as OSRAM, Ausland Black laser diodes. And they're in what's called a Fabry-Perot structure, which focuses the infrared beam. And you've got 24 at 800 milliwatts. That means you've got 24 times 800 times, and it works out at 19,200 times the ICNIRP, which is the government's safety limit level, 19,200 times. And they're pointing at people as they walk around through London. Now, ICNIRP, which is the International Commission of Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, is the body that the government relies on to protect you and say everything is safe. How come they've installed this equipment at 19,200 times the ICNIRP so-called safety level? And this equipment does mesoscopic surveillance. That means it goes under your skin and picks up your biometrics. Now, there's a tremendous hoo-ha about biometric scanning because of digital ID. Well, we've got it in London because digital ID is the scanning of your biometrics in that sense. And then it goes back through a back hall to an AI computer analyzing it. Now, you asked me about Epstein. In the Epstein files, there's a woman called Nicole Junkermann. And I prepared some information about Nicole Junkermann. It's a woman I'd never heard of before. But if I read out what I discovered about Nicole Junkermann. Nicole Junkermann is a member of the UK Health Tech Advisory Board, which aims to improve technology use in the NHS and enhance patient outcomes. The board includes various experts from health and technology sectors to guide the government's health technology vision, which comes back to your point about Trump and AI. Now we go on to a little bit more about Nicole Junkermann. Nicole Junkermann has been linked to Jeffrey Epstein through email correspondence, revealing a long-term relationship that included discussions about business and investments. She is mentioned multiple times in the recently released Epstein files, highlighting her connections with various high-profile individuals. Now, we know Epstein was involved in technology, and this woman is on the technology board of the UK, involved in the NHS. So if you've got a scanning technology system in London scanning you under your skin at the biometric level, and you've got people like Nicole Junkermann involved with Epstein looking at technology in the NHS. And we know they've been digitizing everybody's files in the NHS. So if they find you walking through London, they can scan you with this technology, because this is scanning technology, locate your biometrics, compare it with what's on the NHS data files, identify you, and see you walking around London. Now, what is the Brit card? It's biometric, registration, identification, and what was the last thing? Tracking. Brit card. That's what they're doing in the middle of London, although the government has said they're not doing digital ID. So we come full circle back to your point about Trump and AI. And don't forget, he butted up the mafia and got them sent to prison. He's now hobnobbing with their AI bosses. Now, don't forget we were talking about a change in human consciousness, and this what Jay Krishnamurti talked about, this crisis in consciousness. We could go either way. We can become subordinate to AI and allow the Transport for London to continue to take your biometrics, or we can flower out in a truthful society, get this equipment removed legally, and let AI become a servant of humanity. If it's the latter, and I'm optimistic it will be, then Trump needs the technology companies to go in the right direction. And I think that is the purpose of the film. You remember 2001, Stanley Kubrick film? Do you remember 2001?
Space Odyssey.
Space Odyssey. Stanley Kubrick seemed to be a remarkable man. First of all, he unearthed the satanic rituals. Do you remember in Eyes Wide Shut? Did you ever see that film?
Yeah, I think I did, but my memory's not particularly great, so you might need to
just to recap. Eyes Wide Shut had Nicole Kidman and Tom Cruise in it. And in the film, you have these very, very strange rituals, which were clearly satanic type rituals. So he was warning humanity what was going on behind the scenes. Then he made that film, Space Odyssey, 2001 Space Odyssey, in which the crew goes up in a spacecraft in which the computer is HAL, nicknamed HAL. It's an AI computer guiding them through. And HAL takes over from the human crew. And there's a battle to see who's going to win, whether it's going to be HAL sending them to destruction or whether it's going to be humanity rising above AI and taking direction of the spacecraft. And luckily to say, humanity won. And that's where I think we are now. But in order for humanity to use AI correctly as a servant, you need to have the people who are controlling AI to go in the right direction. And that's why Trump is fostering relationships, in my view, with these AI people. Because if you haven't got them on your side, and coming back to your point, does he use evidence against them? Do you remember your point?
Which one?
You said that he's got stuff in the Epstein files which he could use against people.
Mm.
You remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Does he use such evidence against people to get them pointing in the right direction? I don't know, but could be. So
Well,
I'm not...
Nothing is off the table at this point.
Exactly. Yeah. And as I say, I could be completely wrong in my assessment of humanity and of Donald Trump. And the time will tell. But I just have the feeling that it is going in the right direction. The wars will stop, the drug dealing will stop, the Federal Reserve Bank will be removed, and the Fed is connected with the Bank of England and all the central banks, like the Bank of International Settlement in Geneva. The whole monetary system will become based on gold, maybe Bitcoin and silver. So you can't print money forever without any comeback. It's a limited situation. So you can't finance these things like USAID, propagating these terrible organizations like Open Society, creating havoc in society. All of that dries up. And I think...
What does that look like in the real world, though? Like
right.
My mortgage, for example,
Yes.
I'm kind of at the start of it. I've still got some considerable way to go. When the monetary system that we currently use, which isn't really money anyway, collapses.
Yes. I don't think...
How does that affect everyone?
Right. I don't think, you see, the collapse is what we might call, let's call them bad people. They're still people, but they're just bad in the sense they seem to like war. They seem to happy to push drugs on people. What we would call bad people. They would have liked a financial collapse. And then Klaus Schwab could have done his great reset. Do you remember when he talked about this?
Own nothing, be happy.
Yeah, own nothing, be happy, exactly. But I don't think Trump wants a collapse because it won't make people happy. In fact, it would be a source of tremendous suffering. So I think he's transitioning from an inflationary-based economy, which is the fiat currency, the paper currency, to a real currency in which all these money laundering things dry up. Because when you say, what does it look like in society? When you print unlimited money and you're linked to a lot of bad people, you can get them to do things like Open Society, which do bad things in our society. And you get organizations like Black Lives Matter, Extinction Rebellion, all these things. But in relation to your mortgage, for example, what's happened in America, the young people haven't been able to buy a house because the interest rate's been too high, their incomes have been squeezed, and they can't afford to buy it. So he's bringing in a 50-year mortgage to reduce their monthly repayments. Jerome Powell, who's head of the Federal Reserve Bank, will be replaced because it's coming to the end of his term. A new chap will go in, interest rates will come down. The young people will be able to start buying houses again. And inflation won't be occurring because inflation happens when you print money beyond the productive output of the economy, and that causes prices to rise. If you take away the Federal Reserve Bank or a central bank system, you can't print that money in an unlimited fashion. So inflation disappears from the system, gone, and people's incomes will go up because costs will go down. Like, for example, oil prices will start to come down significantly, and they're involved in the buying and selling, transport of
See, but
goods.
the thing is, though, in fairness, oil prices aren't bloody high. It's the fucking tax that we pay on top of it.
Well, that's part of it, but oil prices have been high. But I agree with you. The tax system, I mean, looking at America as a model, and I think it would be propagated throughout the Western world, maybe throughout the whole world. When he's going to abolish income tax in America, get rid of it. And he can do that because of the tariff system. And he's going to give the Americans a bonus of $2,000, I think in June or July, $2,000. So that will give them more spending money as a result of the taxes, or a result of the tariffs. That sort of mechanism will give people much, much more disposable income. I do think oil prices in their own right will go down, but I agree with you, in the UK, the taxation is ridiculously high because of the net zero Green New scam. That new scam is falling apart. More and more people are beginning to see that. So what goes on in America will have a huge impact on what goes on in the UK, and things will adjust here like a flower opening up in the sunshine. So I think that the economy in the UK will also change. And, people will say Britain is doomed. I don't think Britain's doomed.
I think, if I'm honest, unless we can get rid of government in its current form, we kind of are doomed.
Well, I think government will change.
Because I don't think reform's the answer. I
Yeah.
think Farage is as much establishment man as the next one. I don't see, and even within the truth movement, it's so fractured because anyone who's got good morals and they get somewhere, they then become labelled a shill because, do you know what I mean? There's so much paranoia within the movement, I suppose, that we would deem ourselves in. And then you've got, I don't know, I sometimes wonder, government is shit, nobody likes it, they're corrupt as hell, but I don't know what a bunch of free thinkers, I don't see how we can make this overall big change and everyone lives in harmony.
Yes.
Without we have to have someone in charge, don't we?
Yes. You see,
there has to be.
You see, I'm not too worried about Nigel Farage because you look at what happened to Starmer. He had to sack Mandelson, didn't he? He didn't want to sack Mandelson. He obviously put him in there for a reason. Mandelson has been a fixer for the Labour Party for decades. So the Labour Party, through Starmer, put him in for a reason. But public opinion has shut him down. And the same will apply to Nigel Farage. If in the next election in the UK, whenever it goes in, people are sick and tired with the Tories and the Labour Party, a few will vote Green, although the Greens seem to be captured because they believe in these, net zero twaddle and all that. But leave them aside because they're largely irrelevant. But if you go back to Farage, let's assume he has a very big majority. Society is now, as I say, beginning to flower. He will have to go in the direction of the way the human consciousness is moving. And that's why I'm not too worried about Farage, because he'll be dragged along in that human consciousness. And I think that is a cosmic change, irresistible change. And I do think our society will change. The whole tax structure will change in due course. There'll be much more freedom for businesses to develop. And it'll follow what's going on in America. I wouldn't be surprised if eventually, that British society grows out of the monarchy. We have a proper written constitution, similar to the American Constitution, and that we then move forward in a direction which is much more healthy psychologically and economically. So I'm not worried about Nigel Farage and all of that. And I think what they did to Rupert Lowe was very, very bad, where Zia Youssef apparently and Nigel Farage, don't know how much it was Youssef or how much Farage, but to accuse Rupert Lowe of being senile and threatening to kill or to shoot I think the allegations were they had to take his guns away because there was the idea that Rupert Lowe was going to go in and shoot these people. I mean, I can't imagine anything more far-fetched than that. But that is not nice behavior. But I'm not too worried that they'll be able to carry on with that type of thing because it'll all come out in the open. And if they're doing it again, they'll have to resign like Mandelson and all the rest because public opinion is going in that direction.
Yeah, but we talk about public opinion and stuff, but Keir Starmer is literally hated by 90% of the people. He's loathed. Why is he still there? Let's face it, he's been groomed into that position. When you look at the photos of him as a young boy with Jimmy Savile, he's obviously been traumatized into the position he's in. If that makes sense, he's obviously.
I follow your reasoning. What I would say is, when a baby grows up, it doesn't turn out from a little baby just popping out of the womb to being a fully fledged adult functioning in a university overnight. It's a gradual flowering, and we're going through that gradual flowering at the moment. The fact that Keir Starmer had to remove what's his name, Mandelson. And what's his name, Morgan McSweeney, I should say, had to resign. They're not things calculated by the club, this ruling elite. They didn't want to do those things, but they're being forced to do it by this rising awareness in humanity. It is unacceptable for Britain to have a man closely associated with one of the worst pedophiles in the world representing Britain to America as the ambassador. And the British public know that, and Starmer couldn't do anything about it. And it'll be the same with Reform once they get in. If they've got bad people in Reform wanting to do bad things, they'll be overpowered just as Starmer has been overpowered.
But then what about then King Charles and his really close relationship with Jimmy Savile?
Well,
and with Epstein, they're all linked.
I do think, who knows, but I do think the royal family will just gradually fade away. I mean, the whole basis of a royal family, the idea that they've got DNA which is superior to yours or mine, is an outdated concept. Quantum physics is explaining that we all have DNA decoding from the morphogenetic field, our thoughts, emotions, and so on, all contained in that field. The idea that a few people with a German name are somehow special is really long out of date. And I think gradually, because of the awakening of human societies all around the world, these things will gradually dissolve. The whole business of monarchy will dissolve. In relation to your point, if you look up Mountbatten on the internet, you'll see that he was a paedophile. You look up Jimmy Savile, he was connected with the old Queen, the dead one, and with Prince Charles as he then was. He had that dinner apparently every year with Mrs. Thatcher when she was Prime Minister, allegedly.
And Ted Heath.
Ted Heath.
Out on the boat where the orphan boys would go for a day trip, but sometimes wouldn't actually come back.
What I heard through John Wedger, he was an
the ex-police.
Metropolitan Police detective, all of that is a feature of an old, corrupted system. And Epstein was part of that old, corrupted system. And Epstein didn't just work in the UK, it was international. I mean, the ex-Prime Minister of Israel was very much connected, Ehud Barak. You have, I said, Nicole Junkerman operating in the tech advisory body, in the health advisory body in the UK, connected with the NHS. You had university professors, Noam Chomsky, apparently, the psychology chap. So they had these fingers throughout the whole network of Western society. And all of that, it's as if a tremendous pure energy is coming in, releasing their fingers from the grip of all these tools. And I think it's a marvellous time to be alive.
I'll tell you who I was quite shocked to see on there, even though I suppose not surprised, and that's that Deepak Chopra, or whatever his
Oh,
name
yes.
is.
Yeah.
All these
Yeah.
spiritual gurus.
Yes. Well, there are lots of false gurus all over the place.
Oh, mate.
Yeah.
I
But
mean,
I'm glad to have met. I mean, he might have done some funny things in his earthly life, but he had a quality where you recognized this man was a true human being. He had this ability to communicate without any words, and you knew instantly what he represented. What he represented by his pure being
who's
was.
this?
This is a chap called J. Krishnamurti.
Okay.
He's actually David Icke refers to him on occasion, and not much recently. But as I said, Van Morrison. Have you heard of Van Morrison? He's a folk singer in Ireland. He wrote a song, No Teacher, No Guru, No Method. And that was after listening to this philosopher, J. Krishnamurti. He's dead now, died 40 years ago. And what he's saying is this change in human consciousness that we've been discussing is not a conscious thing. It's not saying, I'm now going to do this, go and do that. You do that in normal life, but this is an evolution of an entirely different consciousness which grows of its own accord, and it is a benediction when it's there. And it's something that everybody can understand because it's a compassionate consciousness.
It is the Christ consciousness coming into play.
Yes.
And so when people say the Christ will return, it's not necessarily in like a physical, oh, there you are, mate. It's in the way that we think.
Absolutely. You see, the hints are in the last book of the Old Testament. Jesus of Nazareth was a Jewish man who then ushered in the new era of Christianity after the closure of the Old Testament. And the last book of the Old Testament is the book of Malachi. And in the last chapter of the book of Malachi, it refers to the Son of Righteousness, not Jesus, the man, but the sun, in the solar system, S-U-N. It's referred to in the book of Malachi as the S-U-N of righteousness. And that energy is emitting a new consciousness, which many people refer to as the Christ consciousness. And the pyramids around the world, there are pyramids all over the world. For example, there's a man called Dr. Sam Osmanagic who discovered the pyramids in Bosnia, which are bigger than the ones in Egypt. Those are scalar wave resonators. They're picking up this energy and spreading it out through the field of humanity. And human beings are responding unconsciously to this new energy. And that energy...
It's like a big MK Ultra, isn't it?
Well, it's not MK Ultra in the sense of a malicious control.
No.
It's a freeing of humanity from imprisonment in a limited consciousness. So I think it's extremely encouraging.
When do you see things? Do you think we'll see changes in our lifetime then?
Oh, definitely. Oh, you're already seeing them now. I mean, who would have thought Keir Starmer would be removed of his ambassador? He'd be removed of his chief of staff, Morgan McSweeney. These people were in positions of sort of security, immovable security. Mandelson was controlling, like a Svengali, the Labour Party for many, many years, sitting on a throne. That throne is smashed, gone, finished. He might even go to jail. I don't know. But he's finished as a politician.
Who do you think the good guys are dictating this side of the pond? Obviously, you've got Trump in America, but who's pulling the strings this side of things?
Well, I mean, that's a very good question. I've often asked that question, and I can't get a tangible answer. But you are part of this change of consciousness. You've been holding videos. How many years have you been doing it?
About 3 years, I think.
In 3 years, yeah. So you're part of this stream of consciousness. You've been examining what's been going on in our society and putting it out to people so they can think, they can look, and they can see. That's not separate from Donald Trump. It's part of the same movement in changing human consciousness to go in the right direction. And you're not sitting down and saying, I want to change human consciousness to go in the right direction. You're just seeking out truth and looking and say, is this true? Is
What resonates and what doesn't?
Exactly. Like you said to me, what is the situation of Trump in relation to AI? There are many people who think that Trump is in bed with the AI people and is part of, just like Ike says, part of the controlling elite. Well, let's look at it. Let's examine it, see his behavior in all these areas. He should be open to scrutiny so that we can find out. And if he is going in that direction, humanity will stop him if we're going through this change. If he isn't, and he's part of the flow of truth, then what he's doing is quite remarkable. And as I say, you're definitely, in my view, part of this movement because you're not taking nonsense. You're asking me, what I'm saying, is it true or is it not true? Like Socrates said, let's look into it, let's question everything. And
in society these days, we're not allowed to do that, are we? We have to bow down to authority. You have to take our word. And if you question anything, you're racist, you're a bigot, you're xenophobe, and you're whatever other buzzword that's being used at the moment. So I am grateful that I am part of that. I do see myself as part of that, but not in a look at me kind of way. And yeah, there's loads of decent YouTube channels at the moment kicking out some really good stuff. I wish there was just more freedom on YouTube because although there are other platforms, YouTube is the biggest platform that gets the most billions of visits a day. And so it's still an important platform.
Definitely. But don't forget, YouTube has changed dramatically. I mean, we're now talking about things that we couldn't have talked about.
Well, we don't know. This hasn't aired yet, has it? This is Zoom, not YouTube.
Yes, that's a good point. But I've been listening to other things on YouTube. For example, there's a chap called Rich Does Politics, and he's unearthing the role of Britain behind the scenes, controlling America. And everyone thinks America controls Britain.
No, it's all controlled. It's all controlled out of the square mile, isn't it?
Exactly. Yes. And for example, Franklin D. Roosevelt, the president just before the end of the war, Second World War, he is reputed to have written, "I don't want to go into the State Department, the Foreign Office in America, because it's full of British agents." That's allegedly what he said. So Britain has been a very significant controller through things like the Privy Council, the Council on Foreign Relations, Chatham House, and infiltrating British spies. I mean, look at Christopher Steele, an ex-British MI6 agent, enmeshed in the American-Russia hoax against Trump. That's how Britain has operated, by putting these people in, running these unelected bodies. Look at our dear friend Klaus Schwab, poor fellow, no longer a boss of the World Economic Forum. He was a protege of Kissinger, who received a knighthood from Britain, allegedly. So you can see how all these people are queuing up, like David Beckham, give me a knighthood. I'd be so happy to be called Sir Nicholas Martin. Marvelous. So, I mean, all of this is disintegrating now, isn't it? I mean, it's just flowing as if a new stream is coming, washing all this rubbish away.
Yeah, you've also got like the death of the celebrities going on.
Yes.
I don't mean literal. I just mean that they're no longer they're not becoming the idols that they always were. Everyone views them as, well, you've got some dark secrets.
Well, I think B. Diddy has done a lot to wake people up about what's been going on in Hollywood. Mel Gibson has done a lot, as you know.
Yes, good old Mel.
Yeah, and the Olympic ceremonies, I haven't watched them, but the one that we had in Britain years ago.
The 2012 one.
Was it? Yeah, a long, long time ago.
With like the deaths and the hospital beds. And,
yes, all of that, yes. And this one in Italy is apparently also full of symbolism. I haven't actually seen it.
I'll have to look at it.
Yeah, it's full of occult symbolism. But people are waking up now, no question about it. You can say things to people that you couldn't say to them 3 or 4 years ago, and they'll understand what you're talking about. Because this old control, and it is a control over people's minds, the sort of control that I was pointing out correctly is lessening as each day goes by. And it's not, as I say, it's not a contest, not you going on holding a discussion with Nicholas Martin to liberate humanity. You just want to get at certain truths. And indirectly, that fertilizes truth in society. And that's how it grows, like a seed of truth popping up.
I'm always saying this. I said on the last podcast, I said we are literally just like farmers planting seeds.
Yes.
You might not get to see that tree flourish and become a tree,
Yes.
but you walk away knowing that you've done your bit in the hope that it does its bit.
Exactly. Yes. And I commend you for it, because I know you're a very decent and very caring human being. And
I have my moments.
And when you're not drug dealing and money laundering, you're an excellent man.
Oh dear. Did you get that, FBI? Yeah. Okay, good. Well, listen, thank you very much for your time. I've really enjoyed you incriminating me. I've really enjoyed the discussion. I think we've raised quite a few good, valid points. And I hope that's left a lot of those who are watching some good food for thought.
Great.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you would like to close with? Or were you...
It's always nice to be with you, and we've crossed paths on many different events, and it's always nice to see you again. And thank you for your time today.
Likewise. It is a great pleasure. And let's not leave it so long for the next one.
Okay.
So yeah. Well, I hope everyone watching that has enjoyed it, taken away from it, and let's start the revolution together. But until next time, look after yourselves, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.